The subject of today's Speaker's Stump Speech is the ALEC States and Nation Policy Summit. We got a great guy us explain all that and explain what the heck we're all doing here with several hundred legislators and private sector folks and think tank types all around the country. Lee Schalk, who is the Senior Vice President for Policy for the American Legislative Exchange Council. Lee, I bet that was music to your ears and probably everyone at ALEC that Governor Mike Kehoe, the newly minted governor of the state of Missouri, 1 year in office, has said that cutting Missouri's income tax is his priority for 2026.
That is music to any taxpayer's ears, Tim, and especially for you guys there in Missouri, it's great to have a governor showing that type of leadership because, as you know, the states that don't impose a tax on income, they are positioned for economic growth. These are the states that are booming, Tim. And so you're in such a competitive region there in Missouri. Think about the states that you're bordering that are chipping away at their income taxes. Arkansas, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Kentucky, Iowa. You've got to get this done.
Lee, what is the best way to do this? Is it to just do it right off the top, eliminate the personal income tax, or to phase it out over a number of years? What is the best way to do this?
You know, personally, Chris, I favor a bold reform that, if you've got a progressive income tax system, first off, you've got to move to a flat tax right away. But I also think it's critical to make sure that everyone in your state is getting a tax cut when you pass a plan like this. And so I favor bold reforms. If you can phase it out over a couple of years, that's incredible. There are states like Oklahoma that are looking at doing it over a longer timeline. That's great too, but I'm always going to be in favor of the bigger, bolder reforms and starting with the flat tax, making sure everyone gets a tax cut. That's critical. But you've also got to make sure that you're cutting spending. The spending side of the equation is critical as well.
Yeah, Lee, that's such a great point. And Lee, so many states have cut their income tax or eliminated it properly, appropriately. And haven't, Lee, they seen a lot of prosperity follow in the wake? Lee, all the big government types are always wringing their hands and saying, well, how are we going to, quote, pay for this tax cut? Well, Lee, I think we've seen with the 8 or 9 states in the country that don't have an income tax, that are reducing or eliminating their income tax, that you don't necessarily have to worry about the pay-fors if you control spending. And once you eliminate that income tax, that burdensome tax, you will see prosperity flow into your state. And Lee, I know ALEC tracks this all across the country. The proof's in the pudding. That's what we have seen over the last 2 decades, haven't we?
You're 100% right. And we track this every year in our Rich States, Poor States publication. All the rankings and the data is at richstatespoorstates.org. But I'll give you a great case study. I mean, the state of Florida is one of 9 states that does not tax personal income. Now, if you look at our data, look at census data over the last decade, they have added just under 2 million new residents on net. And think about not just new residents. I mean, think of all the job creators, the opportunity that Americans are voting with their feet and moving to the Sunshine State. Now, by contrast, where are a lot of these folks coming? I mean, they're coming south on 95 from the Empire State of New York, a state with some of the most burdensome taxes on income, on businesses. I mean, across the board, New York is a basket case. New York, by contrast, has lost 2 million residents on net over the last decade. So like you said, Tim, the proof is in the pudding. And this is one of the key topics that we're talking about here in Fort Worth. We've got 1,200 people here, national, state, local leaders from across the country. And they want to know, how can we eliminate income taxes in our state? And there are a lot of people here at the conference that they can learn from. That's one of the great things. We're exchanging ideas and best practices.
Lee, some of the opponents of eliminating the personal income tax say that generally other taxes go up to make up the shortfall. Is that the case, and how do you avoid that?
You can't always avoid it, Chris. I think that a balanced tax reform package, you may see small increases in sales tax rates, for example. But I think what's really important is how you explain this to constituents and to voters. And the reason I say that is because the income tax, we know from looking at decades of data, the income tax, when you've got higher rates, is the most damaging to economic growth. It's the most harmful to families. I mean, I don't know about you, but I want to keep more of those hard-earned dollars in every paycheck. I don't like seeing those dollars taken out. And by contrast, something like the sales tax we've seen that's applied evenly across the board, it's more simple, it's more fair, or evenly applied. But those are some of the questions that folks in Jeff City are going to have to navigate as they work through this plan.
Lee, let's broaden out the discussion. Yes, we are absolutely talking tax and fiscal policy here at the ALEC meeting. There's actually an entire ALEC task force dedicated to that subject matter, but there's a ton of other task forces and a lot of other subject matter. Lee, we're at as I've been saying the last couple of days, I'm here with you and over 1,000 of our closest friends and colleagues in the freedom and liberty movement in beautiful Fort Worth, Texas, which is one of Chris's favorite places on the planet, the Big D area here. The States and Nation Policy Summit. Lee, tell us about this meeting. Tell us about the crowd here. Tell us about the mood and the some of the policy solutions that are being discussed.
Tim, it's just been an awesome week so far. And, I'll give a small correction here. We're breaking records for this conference. We've got 1,200 people in attendance.
Wow.
We've never seen this at one of our December conferences before. And it's because of all the momentum that we've created across the country at the state level in 2025. And I've got to tell you, too, I think folks are really fired up about all of the wins and all the progress that we made with the support of the Trump administration. And so I think that administration, President Trump and his team have helped to empower state leaders in so many ways. But Tim, a couple things that I'll point out this week. I mean, not only are we coming up with new model policy solutions, we've got 80 draft model policies we're looking at. We've also, last night, we celebrated our ALEC policy champions and other ALEC leaders at our awards show. And it was a really fun time to reflect on 2025. One of your friends and one of our mutual friends, Senator Nick Schroer from there in Missouri, he received the Scalia Award at the ALEC conference, recognizing his work on Senate Bill 221 from this past year, eliminating judicial deference in Missouri. We had other legislators that we recognized from Michigan, for example, who were able to identify $5 billion in waste in the state budget. Folks from Ohio who passed the flat tax. I mean, I could go on down the line, but there's so many wins that I think are creating a ton of momentum for the legislators at our conference from all 50 states who are going to carry it home and into 2026.
Speaking with Lee Schalk, Senior Vice President of Policy at ALEC. Lee, the flat tax came into the political vocabulary back in 1996 when Steve Forbes proposed it. A lot of people didn't really know much about it. You don't hear as much about it now as you did back then. Give us a primer on what exactly is the flat tax and how does it work?
Sure. The flat tax, essentially what you've got, Chris, this has become all too common. I'll just start by explaining the opposite of the flat tax, which will be a progressive tax, meaning the more income you earn, the higher percentage of that paycheck you've got to pay the government. Whereas a flat tax, I think it's fair. I think it's fair and it's better for economic growth. No matter what you're earning, everybody pays the same flat rate. Now, of course, the best flat rate is going to be 0%, to have no income tax at all. But I think it's far better for a state, for individuals, for small business owners, when you've got that flat tax. And we saw, of course, we had the flat tax that Steve Forbes made super famous and popular. But over the last couple of years, there's been somewhat of a flat tax revolution at the state level. And so, getting back to ALEC and the exchange of ideas, there's so much we can learn from neighboring states, friends across the country, and how they got this done and what results they've achieved.
Lee, one of the other major policy tax areas that ALEC has had, I think since nearly its beginning, is in the area of education, specifically empowering parents and children to make the best choices for their educational futures, putting parents and students ahead of systems. Lee, you mentioned the Trump administration, and I know they've been a huge partner in an ALEC priority of empowering the states and empowering the parents and the children in those states. Lee, I heard Linda McMahon, who has appeared before at ALEC meetings, she was being interviewed yesterday, and she was pushed on the Trump administration is serious about truly dismantling the federal Department of Education. And she said, we absolutely are. Lee, that's nothing that anybody needs to fear, right? Because the Department of Ed doesn't really educate anybody, right? It's basically become a giant bureaucratic, almost money laundering operation. We would be so much better served, wouldn't we, Lee, if we followed the ALEC principles around education policy and return the power and the money to the states, to the parents, to the kids themselves?
Yeah, the U.S. Department of Education, they're not responsible for educating our kids. And if you look at the results in our country, our education, student test scores since the department was created, they've really gone downhill. And it is time for a change. I'm so glad that Secretary McMahon is defending this effort to, as she calls it, dismantle the department. But how I like to explain it is we're just restoring that decision-making process and that authority to the states where it rightfully belongs. And I think especially in light of the 250th anniversary of our country, it's right around the corner. We're going to be celebrating it in July. What better way to honor our founders' vision for the nation than do something like tap into true federalism and return that power to the states, whether it's in education or in other policy areas. And of course, education is a place where states have truly innovated and led over the last couple of years, especially when you look at universal education freedom, Tim. 17 states now have it on the books.
Lee, the Democrats have made affordability the political buzzword for this year. Of course, it will be next year going into the midterm elections. Candidates from the local to the state to the federal level will be running on that issue. Does ALEC have any position papers or anything that they are promoting to help Republican candidates address affordability in their states, that issue?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that question, Chris, because ALEC just put out a new report called Essential Policy Solutions for 2026. You can download a free copy on our website at alec.org. But throughout this publication, the common theme is affordability for all Americans in the coming year. And, we've already covered the tax reform efforts. I think that's a key part of making sure people have those dollars in their pockets. But we also look at what are solutions to make sure that our energy is more affordable. How about our health care? Healthcare prices going up. That's another common place where we need to look for solutions. And so the ALEC affordability agenda is really woven throughout this new report. And Tim, I think that also includes education. I mean, especially when you talk about, being able to send your child to a school of your choice or afford tutoring for your children. I think that's where programs like education savings accounts or tax credit scholarships are so key in the affordability discussion.
Tim, you have a final thought, sir?
Yeah, one last thing. Lee, I was really impressed at seeing Prime Minister Liz Truss from the UK last night being honored at the awards ceremony. And Lee, she had some really sobering words, didn't she, for all of us? She said, as much as I admire everything that America is doing, especially through the Trump administration with immigration, we all need to take lessons from what we've seen with the failed Euro-socialist policies that the continent has largely received. She said, and most of Western Europe needs to be more like Trumpian America and not less. I think that was a significant warning and a cautionary tale for all of us, wasn't it?
Yes, and she's seen it firsthand. It was sobering, but also encouraging, I think, and really empowering for the legislators in the room. Her message was keep going, keep fighting for the Western values, for these policy values that we all share and know are the key to our prosperity in the future. Keep going and fighting across the states.
And that is Lee Schalk, Senior Vice President of Policy at ALEC. He is at the 2025 ALEC States and Nations Policy Summit in Fort Worth, Texas, with my partner, Speaker Tim Jones. You guys have a great rest of the conference and have safe travels and a great weekend.